Hour 3, the Drive with Jack, the Spotlight Radio Network. I am joined by Lindsay Huddleston of Sports Psychology Solutions. Lindsay, how are you?
I'm doing great, Jack. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Lots of stuff going on. The people in St. Louis don't know quite what to do with themselves today because they finally have a win in the Stanley Cup final. It's taken them 54 years, 53 years to do?
Just a few. But they did beat Boston in overtime last night. And tonight, we have the NBA Finals. That's right.
A lot of people are waiting to see if Toronto can win at home, really have to win this game.
Definitely. You had to set the tone.
Yeah, and we are not going to have Kevin Durant in this game, but we are going to have Boogie Cousins.
Come on, Boogie. Get some of that.
Yeah. What do you expect to see tonight from Golden State after this 10-day layoff?
We'll see Russ trails from their bus all the way to the floor. I mean, some 9 days off. That's a lot, no matter what. And I heard some former NBA greats talking, including Doc Rivers, saying that it's all about staying in that rhythm. And although Golden State went out really good and how they finished the series, they're going to need that time to be back out there. I like the idea of Boogie getting some time in. I think it's really just for him to give a good effort going into what his next season may be, no matter what the outcome may be with the Golden State Warriors, whether they win the championship or not, even though it's leaning towards that they will. But, you want, Golden State to come in. I think they're probably ready to concede that game. Not that they would come out and say it, but it'll be their first game in a long time. That Toronto country, not just city, the country is going to be so supportive. All of Canada is going to have those guys back. And I think it'll be the jolt that Kawhi and company would need to get that first win, and it gives them an opportunity to take advantage of home court advantage.
Do you think that the legacy for the Warriors is at stake here? The difference between winning 3 times in 5 years or winning 4 times in 5 years. I happen to think if you make the NBA Finals 5 straight years, that is enough. But for a lot of people, they're saying that can they get this done? Can they do it shorthanded? Can they do it starting out on the road?
I don't think the great basketball minds and sports minds like the ones here at Spotlight will say their reputation or their legacy will be tarnished. I mean, that's a great feat, what they've done, even their regular season records. And people can say regular season records don't matter. It's all about the postseason. But the Warriors have done a phenomenal job. I mean, to the point that we probably won't see this type of thing in basketball for a very, very long time. Not just talking about all the championships that they've won, but when you're in the finals, just that rugged push to be able to get through a regular season, have a strong postseason push, and end up in the finals so many consecutive years, and having short summers is huge. And still being able to keep, somewhat of a team chemistry. Yeah, we saw the big blowout between Draymond and Kevin Durant, but all in all, that was nothing. So I don't think their legacy is going to be tarnished. I think their legacy is set. They're only adding feathers to the cap, and this is probably going to be the last dance. I hear, and I have to confirm the source, I hear, Jack, that Kevin Durant has purchased a home in New York and put his Bay home up for sale. And that just seems like the transition is starting to take place right now.
So he has in his mind that he wants to be in New York, and that could be the Knicks. It could also be the Brooklyn Nets.
That's right.
Either way.
That's right. So you see all these transitions happening. I think their legacy is set. They've done a phenomenal job. And, unfortunately for KD not being able to finish out the conference finals, the fact that, they're still able to be successful without him just speaks to the great championship culture they have there. And the idea that someone like Boogie Cousins, who's been out since about April, still can come in the lineup and potentially be effective just speaks to the great success they've done out there. And it's going to be missed after this season. I don't think it's going to continue.
What do you think this means to Canada, Ontario, Toronto, basketball north of the border? This series and the opportunity to win. It's never going to be hockey. But is there any reason that basketball in Toronto can't be bigger than baseball?
I think that's a very good chance. Hockey is in its own stratosphere in Canada, and I wouldn't want to say anything blasphemous in saying that basketball and its growth is close to where hockey is. But there's been a huge, huge, huge growth of basketball in Toronto and throughout the country. They even said that when the expansion team came, when the Toronto Raptors came, people almost didn't even know what was going on with the sport, but there's been such a growth. They've had a number of players who've transcended through the higher ranks from AAU on, a number of players who have not only been selected to go to the NBA, but have been number one draft picks. So I think we've seen that growth, and we're going to continue to see that growth going forward. And short of them winning a championship in the next couple of weeks, Toronto, Canada, and basketball are going to be synonymous for a long time to come.
Yeah, absolutely. We have so much to talk about, and we are going to talk more about the Juwan Howard announcements. I guess it was an announcement. Everyone knew that he'd been hired, but the presentation of Juwan Howard and all the tears that went with that today in Ann Arbor. But this is the time of year when you think that these pro athletes, and whether it's hockey or basketball, Lindsay, have gone through training, off-season training, training camp, preseason games, 82-game regular season, 4 rounds of playoffs. I imagine that there are very few players who are 100% physically after that grind.
How could they be?
What can you do with adrenaline? What can you do with the opportunity, and you just don't feel the pain?
Yeah, I think it really comes down to experience. They talk about the importance of having veterans on your staff, veterans, in your locker room, just veterans on the team, even if they're on the latter part of the bench, kind of a Juwan Howard-esque, is important because you're going to have so many different emotions. For example, I heard people talk about the fact that, Golden State has gone through this experience. This is the time when the Golden State Warriors, their family, they stop making the phone calls. They stop making the requests for the tickets. They kind of know this process is old hat for them. But as it relates to the Toronto Raptors and their first, NBA Finals experience, for lack of a better term, it's going to be a madhouse for them because it's going to be a first impression for everyone. So I think the challenge with that is, though you may have all kind of emotions going on, the benefit that the Golden State Warriors are going to have is that they've been through this process before. They know what to expect. They know how to handle themselves compared to a Toronto Raptors team that may have so many other ancillary issues going on. Not necessarily for a Kawhi Leonard who's been through that process, not necessarily for a Danny Green or someone who's had some deep playoff experience. But you talk about championships and the finals, it's a different experience for everybody. And I think the people who've been there before are going to have a whole lot more of an advantage over those who weren't, to be able to manage that anxiety with everything that's going on.
They talked about the ticket prices. And in both of these final series in the NHL, certainly St. Louis fans haven't seen anything like this. It's been 50 years, 49 years to be precise. And they no longer have pro football. So there's some discretionary income in St. Louis, and they say, well, whatever the ticket price is, don't tell me, just take it off my card.
Yeah.
And Boston obviously thinks it's going to win every championship. It's won 12 major championships in the century, last 20 years. That's pretty incredible stuff.
Sure.
They won in every professional sport. And then in basketball, you've got these Warrior fans who know that this is going to be the last game played in Oracle. The last game it could possibly be would be Game 6 of the final, and what it would be like for them to go out in this building with the championship that night. After that, it's going to be across the bay in San Francisco. The atmosphere will change considerably. And hey, we've got Toronto. They have never hosted. And tonight is going to be something unlike anything that's ever happened in Canada.
A lot of history taking place.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. The one thing about those things that you name, the fact that the Oracle fans may have a chance to send them out with the win, the fact that, Toronto may be able to bring the first championship home. So many of those things make you, pull for a team or kind of want to see that. But somehow the sports guys don't look at it that way. It seems like, and you can talk about the experience. The sports guys don't really fall into what the great story would have been. Had that been the case, Zion Williamson would be wearing a Knickerbocker jersey, you know. So I think that even with all those things out there, with even all those opportunities for history to be made, it's up to those players to get out there and play their best game. It's up to them to be able to overcome whatever type of issues and obstacles that may come up, because they all do. And it's up to them to be able to bounce back when something that doesn't go their way happens. It's not really about what storyline we write before the game. It's all about what you do during the game to tell what the real outcome will be.
We will be right back. We have much more to talk about, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the University of Michigan situation with Juwan Howard and the Fab Five. Remembered, Xavier DeGroat is going to be with us. We're talking about autism. We're talking about some tremendous fundraising stuff. Do you know Xavier?
I do know Xavier.
Yeah. It's pretty spectacular stuff.
Busy young man.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to get with him in just a couple of minutes as well. We'll be right back on The Drive with Jack on the Spotlight Radio Network.
Hey, everybody out there in social media, thanks for checking in. Here with Jack Ebling. Xavier's coming in. Hey, buddy, how you doing, man? It's been a little while.
Yeah.
Last time I seen you in just a polo. Normally you got a shirt and tie and a suit. Looking like the best guy in the room. What's going on? You okay?
Yes, I am.
Good. Good to
How's
see
it
you.
going?
Good.
Doing wonderful.
Good. Did you bring your book with you?
No, I didn't, unfortunately. I
We'll
ended
do
up
it
having
another time.
some government.
You know where we live.
Yeah.
Drop in any time.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And what's been new with you?
well, just trying to stay out of jail. It's been good. Lots to follow, lots to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Trying not to go crazy with all the political stuff.
Yeah. What seat did you want me to take?
Why don't you take that seat
Yep.
up there?
All right.
But we're going to do another segment first,
Okay.
and we'll have you on at 5:30. So that'd be good.
Who's all those pictures with out there? With Lloyd Carr and
That's Michael Patrick.
George
Steve.
Bush.
He hosts the morning show here.
He's up in Mackinac right now.
Up in Mackinac.
Oh, why would he be up there? He's related to, he does stuff about government too?
Yeah.
just like
Covering
that.
the chamber conference event.
Probably a good guy for you to know.
So must be a pretty broad radio guy, not just a sports guy.
Mhm.
Oh. Do you see my flyer I send you?
I did.
Okay.
We're going to do another segment with Lindsay and I, and then we'll bring in X at 5:30.
Just a reminder, everyone listening, Friday, tomorrow we'll be in Detroit at University of Detroit's basketball camp with Coach Davis. Bring your guys down. Seen a lot of people joining on Facebook. There's a guy named Tom Crawford. That name familiar to you? I see on Facebook Live over here.
I
Never heard of him? Yeah, it sounded familiar. Name in the past. Hey, Tom. But
He's going to be on Press Pass Sunday night, though. I know that, along with Neil Kepke, and we don't have another guest yet. It might wind up being Lindsay Huddleston.
I know that guy. He might be available too. Yeah, he try to be around. Yeah, that Juwan's press conference. Did you get a chance to see it?
I did.
Yeah, do something. Let's see. Hi, Mama. I see my mother on here too. You have to meet my mom one day. She wanted me to ask you a sports
Is she here? Is she
question.
in town?
No, she's in Detroit. She wanted me to ask you a sports question. She
Yeah.
said you would know. Mother, I'm trying to remember that question. It was somebody she wanted me to ask you. It's going to come to me about who played with somebody else. Don't worry. I know how to reach you too. But it was a question. You definitely asked him that.
Historical question that means I'm old, but that kind of stuff.
No, it means that you're a vessel of information. So somebody could have passed the information on to you.
Will you videotape yourself?
We're doing, this is Facebook Live right here. So I got some folks who can connect with it.
Oh, so neat.
Mm-hmm. You put your headphones on? Or you got the next one?
Do you want me to put them on yet?
You can listen if you want, but your mic is dead, so
Oh, okay.
we'll get you on the next one after this segment. I think I said 5:30, right?
Yeah.
I'm glad you're early. It's good. It's a good habit. It's one I never acquired. Anything special you want to talk about?
No.
Oh, we were
just-
going to talk about the hazing. Bart Starr. Let's do that.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. We got some stuff we can talk about on that. And the research I've done on that is amazing because it's really more problematic than we think. We think it's this whole team building and
Really.
this whole thing about the history of it and sport thing. But then people are scared to say no. That's what they've been doing for so many years over and over again.
He died.
Yeah, he
Bart.
did.
I was gonna meet him down in Alabama when I go see Nick Saban.
Who's that you talking about?
I was
Oh,
gonna
Bart,
go.
Bart,
Yeah,
Bart,
he had a
yeah.
foundation, I think, for Parkinson's or something.
When are you gonna go see Nick?
Sometime looking at this summer in June or July. I have Alan Haller taking care of that for me.
Great. This guy's connected, man.
He is.
Welcome back. It is The Drive with Jack, the Spotlight Radio Network. Producer Doug Warren is an NFL historian. And Doug, we were talking about Bart Starr. And I don't know how many people know the story of what happened to him at Alabama, but he was playing in an era where freshmen could play, and he played a lot his first year and was very good his second year, and then not much after that. And the reasons were kind of hazy before he got to Green Bay, and finally he came clean, and his wife Cherry told the story of a brutal hazing in Tuscaloosa, which basically cost him his senior year. Lindsay, the whole concept of hazing to me is something, if I were a coach, I would want to stay 5,000 miles away from.
Yeah, you want to, but you don't know. Sometimes as a coach, you've already planted that seed.
Yeah.
You know, hazing is looked at in sports as a serious issue that needs to be discussed on all levels. It's not just, college guys in the dorm room. It's this whole sport think that's created when you come into an atmosphere and you think you're establishing a team identity, Jack, but what we don't know, what we found out is that the team identity has already been started when you join the team. So it's not about you joining the team and then doing something else to be part of the team. You were a part of the team when you came and signed up. So that's one thing. Another part, it creates this cycle of hazing, because what happened is an older veteran will say, well, this was what was done with me, and then they'll allow that to be accepted as a standard, and it'll create this cycle. Now, someone who does the opposite of hazing, who gives a good example of great team building, like dinners and things like that, is Coach George Popovich. Now, it may be easy to say that Pop is good at this
How
kind
does
of
he
stuff.
do that? And we know that he was in the Air Force, and a lot of people have said, well, there's the Greg Popovich way. But what does he do that's so different?
He uses wine. Coach Popovich spends in excess of $1 million a year of his own personal money to create this very extravagant dinners that any Spurs player can attend, and to the point where former Spurs player try to check the clientele in the listing to find out if he's going to be at these great restaurants so they can come and have this huge, great experience with some classic wines, great food that he pays for out of pocket to bring his team together to learn and grow together. They're extravagant, and the former players try to get in on it just to be a part of that, and it helps with the team building in a tremendous way.
Well, we hear about the Spurs family. Is that part of it?
I think it is. He's even sent his assistant coaches out and team managers out to actually categorize the event, the wine, put it in a scrapbook. They have to scrape the wine labels off of the bottle, and to be able to categorize it of what event they were at, who was there, what food was ate. It's very detailed, but he looks back on these things, and even all these international players have said this what makes us great, because we come together and learn something together. He's even responsible for the lighting at the venue. He'll get there early.
Wow.
He'll set up the tables. The Athletic did a great article that was great detailed on it, and he's even made some wine sommelier his career, because they showed up at a place and he said, this is the Popovich wine list, wines that he liked, and these have become one of the most popular wine lists. It's an amazing thing, but I use it as an example to talk about, Jack, how you can do things that don't involve the physical violence, that don't involve the trauma, that don't involve, Bart Starr's career was impacted. He had, pain throughout his entire career that stemmed from that.
Right.
And I think
the back
it's really
injuries that he had, they think may even have resulted from
Exactly.
that 2 decades early.
So I think it's really important, not only for our professional clientele to hear, our collegiate coaches, but even our prep coaches and our amateur coaches to hear that when you allow this hazing to take place, it's not really about toughening up your players. You are potentially losing them, when you put them in this type of situation. It's very important that leaders on the team, in the locker room and outside, can step up and speak and say, you know what, this is not the healthiest thing. And just because you went through it, doesn't mean you keep doing it. We used to allow smoking indoors, right? And everybody thought it was okay, but we wouldn't think of doing something like that now. We got to be able to evolve with that.
What about something that would seem like a simple or relatively benign form of hazing? Doug, you can chime in on this too. We know that a lot of times in training camps, rookies or newcomers have to get up and sing their school song or something like that. But now we are finding that some players are just saying, no, that's not what I'm paid to do. And you guys can go do what you want, but no, I'm not doing it.
Yeah, that's tough. You have those people who will draw that line in the sand, especially when you talk about, some of these rookies making millions and millions of dollars. I think there's a fine line between, doing something that's team spirit orientated and doing something that can lead to a traumatic response. When you talk about any physical type of activity, they talked about taping the guy up to the goalpost,
right.
At training camp and leaving him there for hours on end.
Right.
You have to understand, people's experience has been different, and it'd be horrible for a training camp, hazing incident to reopen a traumatic experience for someone. And then also, how does it make you feel about that teammate that did that to you?
Yeah.
Do you really want to go to the mat for this guy? Do you really want to be in the trenches? So I think it's something that has to evolve. The bullying that people have experienced, unfortunately, on social media carries over to this generation of athletes.
Right.
And I think we have to be mindful. A lot of these traditional, old school hazing activities have to be transitioned out for more positive, productive things.
Doug, you've had a chance to talk to a lot of players over time, spanning the decades. Have you found that hazing is on the decline? Is it still there? Is it just taking different forms? Yeah. Right. Right. There have been fatalities at a number of fraternities and even, I guess, sororities, but fraternities, certainly with people falling off balconies or having alcohol poisoning, drinking amounts of alcohol that you would never prescribe for anyone.
Right.
And, you see people who enjoy watching others look foolish or suffer. You see the one thing they always do at the ballpark where they have to put their head on the bat and then
spin around. Oh,
right?
boy, the
And
spins.
then they get up and then they start staggering around, and then that's considered to be relatively benign fun. But when that gets taken to extremes and we find people, who have to chug a certain amount of alcohol or it's poured down their throat or whatever the case may be, I don't know how that helps your team.
No, it's tough. It actually does make your team digress, and it's been documented that happens. And I think also what happens is that people who were influenced by this and they went through it, in many cases, they're the biggest culprit as far as them bringing that to the next generation of athletes on that team. And then if you add other issues and other traumatic experiences, now you may take a simple quote-unquote hazing incident that's totally blown out of proportion. Now, even as a college student being involved with the fraternity, now our line was our organization is a non-hazing organization, but the reality is that you have teenage or young adults with no real thought of what's the right thing to do and pretty much don't have anyone just telling them what not to do.
Right.
And they get going on it. While we're on that, talking Bart Starr, I got a question from a very important follower of mine, Patricia England, my mother, out of Detroit. And she had this question for you. She said, ask Jack, who were the QBs during the Bart Starr era? She learned about football when Fran Tarkenton was a QB for the Vikings, Purple Gang and whatnot. She said, so who was in Bart Starr era?
Probably the most famous, Doug, is your guy, Johnny Unitas, right?
That's right, with the Colts, right?
The Colts.
Uh-huh.
He would be number one. And then, you had quarterbacks, Sonny Jurgensen with the Redskins and Y.A. Tittle with the Giants and Don Meredith, Dandy Don with
Don
the
Meredith.
Packers.
Now,
with the Cowboys, excuse me.
Did Don Meredith, he didn't go on Little House on the Prairie. Who became?
No, that was Merlin
Olsen. Merlin Olsen,
the defensive lineman from the Rams.
Okay.
But we talk about Bart Starr before we let this go, guys. There are two examples of Bart Starr as the ultimate leader. And the reason that he could be a so-so coach with the Packers for 10 years and still be so beloved. He did two things with Green Bay that I didn't know could be done in terms of Vince Lombardi. And one of them was when Lombardi got to New York, came to Green Bay from New York, excuse me. One of the first things he did was look for a whipping boy, and he picked Bart Starr. And he would upbraid him, criticize him in front of the rest of the Packers. And finally, Bart Starr went into Vince Lombardi's office, and he said, please do not ever criticize me that way in front of my teammates. You can say anything you want to me, call me any name you want when we are alone. But if you do what you just did, there's no way I can maintain the respect of this team.
Wow.
And Vince Lombardi thought about it and never criticized Bart Starr publicly. Again, privately many times, but not in front of the other teammates.
Wow, there's a lot of character involved in that conversation.
Absolutely. And then during the game, and we're talking about the Ice Bowl, with the Packers and the Cowboys back in 66, going to the 67 Super Bowl, and they're trying to get this last yard. It's very difficult to get because the ground is frozen. Everybody keeps slipping and sliding, and nobody can get any traction. And 15 seconds to go, and Bart Starr trots over to the sideline, and Lombardi's got a play, and he's got a handoff and a pole and something else involved in the play. I don't remember which play it was, Doug. It was one of the trap plays. And Bart Starr said, the backs, they just can't get any footing, but I can sneak it in if I can get one block from Jerry Kramer on Jethro Pugh. And Lombardi looked at him and said, well, then run it and let's get the hell out of here. And that's exactly what happened.
Wow.
So to believe your quarterback, to trust your quarterback
Mm-hmm.
in a situation like that, when, he wasn't known as a tremendous runner.
Right.
He is the most accurate quarterback and the highest efficiency of any quarterback in NFL history and a 5-time world champion. But to believe that he knew it better from being out there on the field than you did from the sideline says a lot about both of those gentlemen.
Sure does.
Yeah.
You can only hope that you see that kind of character and empowerment and coaching transcend. I think it's hard, because that may be, a new coach with a superstar player coming in that has a good feel from being on the court, from being on the field. And it takes a lot for that, coach to be able to get behind that person and do that. I think that shows growth on so many levels. And I think that's what we're going to be looking for and looking to see more of as, we get into these new seasons of sports, with so many younger players coming along. And just to be honest, generational change. I mean, we started out this segment talking about hazing and how these traditions keep getting passed on. Now, we also want to pass on a tradition where you can't, challenge your head coach appropriately. You can't, tell someone how you feel in a very direct way. And I think that's going to be the biggest challenge in sports going forward was how are we communicating? If it's a coach saying, hey, you letting your coach know that you're going to be late for practice. Did you make a phone call or did you send a text? I think, finding that happy medium with the best way to communicate is going to be important, just like Bart Starr and Vince Lombardi were able to do to get success. And I think that's something all coaches and players have to be open to 2019 and beyond.
That's a great point. We will be back in just a minute, and Xavier DeGroat is in studio. And we're going to talk about some very exciting things that he is involved with in terms of autism and tremendous fundraising. And this guy, man, he's connected in a lot of
He
ways.
stays busy.
Yeah, we're going to talk with Xavier. We'll be right back to Drive with Jack, Spotlight Radio Network.